Jake and Emily had been married for 12 years, their bond forged through shared laughter, quiet evenings, and the chaos of raising 2 children, Sophie, 10, and Liam, 8. Jake, a project manager at a construction firm, worked tirelessly to provide for his family, often arriving home long after the kids had finished homework, and Emily had tucked them into bed. Emily, once a vibrant art teacher, had stepped back from her career to focus on motherhood, though she occasionally sold her paintings online. Their life was a rhythm of school plays, soccer practices, and stolen moments of intimacy between deadlines. For years, Jake prided himself on being a devoted husband. He made sure Emily never felt alone in her sacrifices. He cooked breakfast on Sundays, surprised her with bouquets of peonies, her favorite, and listened intently when she vented about the monotony of laundry and grocery runs. "You're my rock," she'd whisper, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched late-night TV. But lately, Jake noticed a shift. Emily's smiles grew strained, her laughter less frequent. She spent hours scrolling through her phone, dismissing his questions with vague answers. "It's just stress," she said one evening, avoiding his gaze as he asked about her day. "The kids are a handful, and the house. It feels like it's closing in sometimes." Jake suggested a weekend getaway, but Emily declined. "Maybe next month," she murmured, already retreating into the glow of her screen. The changes were subtle at first. Emily started dressing sharper, tailored blouses instead of her usual sweaters, heels kicking against the kitchen tiles. She claimed the new wardrobe was for networking with potential art buyers. Then came the late nights. A client wants a custom piece, she'd say, kissing Jake's cheek before slipping out the door. He'd nod, masking his unease with a smile. One rainy Tuesday, Jake left work early, hoping to surprise Emily with dinner. He found the house empty, the kids at a friend's sleepover. A notification buzzed on her iPad, left charging on the counter. Against his better judgment, he glanced at the screen. "Unknown number. Can't wait to see you tonight." The usual spot. Jake's chest tightened. He typed a reply, fingers trembling. "Emily, who is this?" The response was immediate. "Unknown number. Nice try, M. You know it's Mark." The name punched the air from Jake's lungs. Mark. Emily's college friend, now a gallery owner in the city. She'd mentioned collaborating with him months ago, but Jake hadn't realized how often they'd been meeting. He sank into a chair, the iPad clattering onto the table. When Emily returned hours later, her cheeks flushed and hair windswept, Jake confronted her. "Who's Mark?" he asked, voice steady but eyes burning. Emily froze, her purse slipping from her shoulder. "A business contact." "Why?" "Business contacts don't text about usual spots at 8 p.m. Her composure cracked. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Then Emily sighed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We've been talking. Just talking. I needed someone to see me, Jake. You're always gone, and when you're here, you're exhausted. Mark listens. He cares." Jake recoiled as if slapped. "So this is my fault." "No, but I didn't know how to tell you. It started innocently, but..." "But what?" "You're in love with him." Emily didn't answer. Her silence was a knife. The following weeks were a blur of slammed doors and stifled sobs. Jake moved to the guest room, throwing himself into work to numb the pain. Emily oscillated between guilt and defiance, alternating between pleading for forgiveness and snapping that Jake had neglected her for years. The children sensed the tension, Sophie retreating into her sketchbook and Liam acting out at school. One night, Jake followed Emily. He parked blocks from the upscale wine bar she'd mentioned weeks ago, collar upturned against the drizzle. Through the fogged window he saw her, Emily, radiant in a crimson dress, her hand resting on Mark's arm as they laughed over shared secrets. Jake's fists clenched. He stormed inside, ignoring the hostess's protests. Emily. She turned, her smile dissolving into panic. Jake. Mark stood, a hand raised placatingly. Let's take this outside, yeah. Outside. Jake snarled. You've been sneaking around with my wife, and you want to take this outside. Patrons stared. Emily tugged Jake's sleeve, her voice trembling. Please, not here. He shook her off, glaring at Mark. You think you're special. She'll toss you aside too when she's bored. Mark's jaw tightened. You don't know her like I do. The words ignited something primal. Jake lunged, fists flying, until bouncers dragged him onto the rain-slicked pavement. Emily crouched beside him, tears mixing with the downpour. I'm sorry, she choked. I never meant to hurt you. Jake shoved her away. Go. Be with him. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Emily moved out, leaving Sophie and Liam clinging to Jake in a too-quiet house. She promised to visit, but the kids recoiled from her hugs, their trust shattered. Mark's name became a curse in their home, whispered like a ghost. Jake struggled to rebuild. He hired a nanny, threw himself into coaching Liam's soccer team, and lay awake nights replaying every moment he'd missed, every sigh Emily had stifled, every plea for attention he'd dismissed. Guilt gnawed at him, but so did rage. How could she choose a stranger over their family? Over him? Then, at a parent-teacher conference, he met Clara. She was Sophie's new art instructor, her warmth effortless, her eyes kind. They chatted over lukewarm coffee, and for the first time in months, Jake laughed. Clara didn't pry about his past, didn't flinch at his scars. She simply listened. But as Jake drove home that night, Emily's face flickered in his mind, her smile, her betrayal. He wasn't ready to trust again. Not yet. Clara's presence became a quiet anchor in Jake's unraveling world. She attended Sophie's soccer games, offering gentle encouragement, and lingered after art classes to discuss colour theory with a passion that reignited something dormant in Jake. Her laughter was soft, her questions thoughtful, and she never pressed him to share more than he could give. Yet, every time Jake considered opening up, Emily's ghost tightened its grip. You don't have to pretend, Clara said one afternoon as they sorted through donated art supplies in the school storage room. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, catching the silver streaks in her dark hair. I know what it's like to rebuild after everything falls apart. Jake hesitated, a box of acrylic paints trembling in his hands. My kids, they still ask about her. Why did Mom leave? Did we do something wrong? I don't have answers. Clara placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm and steady. They'll find their own answers in time. Just be there. Meanwhile, Emily's new life unravelled faster than she'd imagined. Mark's gallery shows and late-night business dinners grew increasingly secretive. He criticised her paintings as too derivative and scoffed at her desire to reconnect with the kids. They're better off without the drama, he'd say, pouring another drink. The man who'd once hung on her every word now barely glanced up from his phone. One frigid December evening, Emily showed up unannounced at Jake's doorstep, her coat soaked through from sleet. I made a mistake, she blurted, tears freezing on her cheeks. Mark, he's not who I thought. Please, let me see the kids. Jake blocked the doorway, Sophie and Liam peering cautiously from the stairs. You don't get to disappear and waltz back in when it's convenient. I'm their mother, and I'm the one who stayed. His voice cracked. You chose him. Now live with it. He closed the door and leaned against it until Emily's muffled sobs faded into silence. The holidays passed in a haze. Clara invited Jake and the kids to her tiny cottage for Christmas dinner, filling the space with cinnamon candles and mismatched ornaments. Liam glued himself to her side, marvelling at her stories of teaching art in Italy. Sophie, though quieter, sketched Clara's profile when she thought no one was looking. She's nice, Sophie admitted later, tucked into bed. Not like Mom. Jake's throat tightened. Mom loves you. She's just lost. Then why doesn't she come home? He had no answer. Spring brought an uneasy truce. Emily applied for joint custody, but the children refused to date. Liam threw tantrums before every court-appointed dinner, and Sophie begged to stay with Dad. Jake's lawyer had warned him to remain neutral, but neutrality seemed like a betrayal to him. One Saturday, Clara found him pacing his kitchen after another cancelled visit. Talk to me, she urged. I can't keep watching them hurt, Jake said, gripping the counter. What if I'm failing them? What if I'm just another version of her? Clara turned him to face her, her gaze fierce. You're here. You're fighting. That's everything. For the first time, Jake kissed her, a tentative brush of lips that tasted like hope and fear. Clara pulled back, searching his face. I'm not a replacement, she whispered. I know, he said. Neither am I. Emily's downfall came swiftly. Mark, embroiled in a tax fraud scandal, cut ties with her to save his reputation. Broke and ostracized, she showed up at Jake's office, desperation etched into her hollow cheeks. I need help, she begged. Just enough to rent a studio. I'll pay you back. Jake studied the woman he'd once vowed to cherish. The defiance in her eyes had dulled to resignation. I'll give you money, he said slowly, on one condition. You tell the kids the truth. No excuses. Just why? Emily flinched but nodded. The conversation was brutal. Sophie screamed, hurling a vase against the wall. Liam hid in his closet, refusing to speak for days. But slowly, the rawness scabbed over. Emily moved to a studio apartment across town, her visits sporadic but punctual. The kids never called her Mom again. Clara's patience never wavered. She taught Sophie to sculpt, her hands guiding the girls through lumps of clay until anger transformed into art. She attended Liam's therapy sessions, holding Jake's hand as their son described nightmares of abandonment. One evening, as they sat on Clara's porch watching fireflies, Jake whispered, I love you. Clara smiled, her head resting on his shoulder. I know. Years later, at Sophie's high school graduation, Emily lingered at the back of the crowd, her face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Jake spotted her but said nothing. Sophie, now a scholarship-bound art student, hugged Clara tightly before ascending the stage. Liam, taller and quieter, waved at his father with a shy grin. Afterward, as twilight painted the sky, Clara laced her fingers with Jake's. You did good, she said. He kissed her temple, watching their children laugh in the golden light. We did. Emily slipped away unnoticed, her shadow dissolving into the past.